Welcome, Senator Deeds. Thank you for joining us today for our candidate interviews for this round of General Assembly elections. I'm Barry Butler, Director of Government Relations for the Lynchburg Regional Business Alliance, and we are having a few little technical difficulties. Our other interviewer will be joining us shortly, and we'll add them in as we go. But again, we're doing this with all the candidates and the campaigns that will that are touching on the Lynchburg region. And for our purposes, this is 3 state senate districts as well as 4 House of Delegates district that touch on the 4-county region and the city of Lynchburg, which make up the Lynchburg region. So again, welcome. Just to go ahead and kind of get started a little bit, and once Luke is able to get back in, I'll have him introduce himself for the purposes of this interview. But if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, your professional experience, and your connection to the district that you're going to be running for.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for having me. My name's Creigh Deeds. I'm a lawyer by trade. Originally, I'm from Bath County, Virginia, which is a little place over west of here, but I live down Charlottesville. The district that I'm running in is Charlottesville, Albemarle County, Nelson County, Amherst County, and the western part of Louisa County. I've been in the legislature for 32 years. I ran for statewide office a couple times. I spent 10 years in the House of Delegates, the last 22 years in the Senate. Currently the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I serve on the Finance Committee. I serve on the Rules Committee, the Commerce and Labor Committee, the Privileges and Elections Committee. I stay pretty busy. I'm also the chair of the Behavioral Health Commission, and I'm chair of the Joint Commission on Administrative Rules. I'm a serious legislator. I'm proud of the fact that I probably get more bills passed than anybody else most years. Right, and I certainly have in 2 out of the last 3, and I usually am I'm among the most prolific legislators. I believe in using government to making government relevant to the people I represent, and using government as a tool to improve the lives of the people I represent. I've worked really hard in a number of areas over the years. Obviously, I've been involved for a long time. I'm much better at government than I am at politics. You know, and I don't like politics as much as I used to, but I enjoy the work of actually governing. I enjoy the work of the legislature.
Excellent. Okay. And then the next question is thinking about this new district that you're going to be running in. If you are reelected, what will be your legislative priorities for this next session?
Sure. Well, my legislative priorities don't change. You know, I picked up Amherst and part of Louisa, but I've represented Nelson, Albemarle, and Charlottesville for the last 22 years. I'm losing the Rockbridge area. I'm losing the parts in the west, Rockbridge, Allegheny, Bath, and Holland, and they're all good people. But the issues that those folks deal with are very similar to the issues that the rest of this district, this new district, deals with. We've got to focus on making sure that we give our young people an opportunity to thrive. And that means we've got to focus on K through 12 education. We've got to, you know, it's always irritated me to think that some people think our goal should be to have average teacher wages, and our goal, any parent that wants their kids to be average sets expectations too low, in my view. You know, none of us want our kids to be average. We want our kids to be excellent. We want our kids to achieve. And so we have to invest in K through 12 education. We've got to make sure we have the best school system in the country. And I think we have the tools with which to do that. But we can't just focus on K through 12 education. We also have to make sure we have solid trades education through vocational schools in the localities I represent, and through our community college system. We've got to focus on making higher education more accessible to people and more relevant to people's lives. A college education is not for everybody, but for a lot of people, it's the key to advancement. It's the key to earning more money, providing for their families. And so I'm going to always focus on education. But you know, government is infrastructure. It's the infrastructure business. Education is part providing the intellectual infrastructure for the community. We also have to focus on the other part other parts of infrastructure, and healthcare it's huge to me. There's an important hospital system in Lynchburg. There's an important hospital system, two of them in Charlottesville. Those healthcare has to be affordable and accessible to people. I've focused a lot on mental health care access the last few years, and I'm going to continue to focus on that. My goal is to build the best mental health state system, public system in the country, and I think we can do that. There are lots of states that do have some good aspects of the program, but everybody's pretty much in the same boat. They struggle. In Virginia, we've chronically underfunded our mental health system for years. We've got a lot of work to do. Another key aspect of infrastructure is transportation. We focused on that in the past. We've done some pretty exciting things, I think, throughout Virginia, but we've still got a lot of work to do there. I stay, and one important goal. I mean, essentially, while I live in Charlottesville now, I'm a rural guy, and I know a lot of rural communities are sick and tired of seeing that last export. Their children leave because there's nothing for them to do. We have to focus not only on building workforce and making kids thrive at the next level of education or in the workforce by investing in K through 12 education, but we also have to focus on economic development, making sure that there's work in every part of the state. In our rural parts of Virginia, there are a lot of communities that don't want a lot of change. They want the communities to stay rural, and I'm with them. But we need enough growth in our communities to sustain our population. We need to focus on making sure people can make a living where they live, where they want to live. Right. So I'm a busy legislator, and I have been for a long time.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you so much. Looks like we might not have Luke, but if he does join in, I will let him in. But sorry for the technical difficulties for our other interviewer. Moving on, and going back to what you're definitely passionate about, education and workforce. I've got a few questions there we want to talk to you about. Thinking about K through 12 education and addressing the attraction and retention of public school teachers. What are some things that we can that can be done through the General Assembly to help localities improve teacher retention and attraction?
The outline for what we need to be thinking about doing in K through 12 education was provided in the JLARC report that just came out a month or so ago that demonstrated that we are dramatically underfunding local school systems. And when we do that, when the state doesn't do its share, the localities have to step up. They have to raise taxes and they have to pay more money for K through 12 education. Part of the budget agreement that we just reached a week or so ago, we included a clause that creates a joint subcommittee between the House and the Senate to try to figure out how we implement the JLARC report, how we provide more funding over the course of time to K through 12 education. This past budget that we just passed includes an extra more than $600 million for K through 12 education. Part of the way we need to retain teachers, we need to give them the freedom to teach, but we also need to pay them a competitive wage. The reality is Virginia is the 10th or 11th wealthiest state in the country. Our teacher pay ranks well down in the bottom half compared to other states. The best paying jurisdictions in Virginia are Arlington and Fairfax County, over $90,000 a year. Just across the river in Montgomery County, Maryland, pay is $10,000 a year more than Fairfax County. We very much have a feeder system. A lot of our rural localities, a lot of our older cities have some of the lowest pay in the state, but some of our suburban localities, some of our wealthier localities, such as Fairfax, Loudoun, and Prince William, they have some of the highest wages in the state, but they're still lower than some of our other states. If we're really going to provide an environment where our school children can, in the future, compete with the rest of the world in this global economy we've got now, we've simply got to invest more in K through 12 education, and we have to raise teacher pay.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that answer. So talking about workforce and other skilled trades, how should the Commonwealth of Virginia invest taxpayer dollars to improve our K through 12 education system with the goal of creating well-trained, skilled workforce? And what are some creative ways that we can improve this the K through 12 system.
Sure. I think K through 12 system begins with the basics, and it begins in the classroom. We have to invest in a curriculum and in a classroom environment that allows children to thrive, and that begins with the teacher. But all the material has to be kept up to date. We also need to make sure that our school systems are engaged with the business community in the localities where they serve, so that at our upper grades, when we were beginning to build our workforce through vocational education and in our community colleges, we are providing relevant training so that people can finish school and either go to the next level of education or step right into the workforce. That ought to be our goal, that our vocational schools are providing relevant service that is going to be relevant to the workforce that the young people are going to step into. I was so excited. I was doing a jobs fair, I guess 2 or 3 years ago at the high school in Lexington, Rockbridge County High School, and there was a welding program that was set up in Glasgow. It was kind of a remote program, but they were sending kids to the shipyards at over $90,000 a year right out of high school. And a lot of the kids' parents simply didn't want to go that far away from home. We have to look at the business community that is there. It's great to train our kids and send them to Newport News. I want people to be able to thrive and do what they want to do, but we also need to be engaged with our local business community and make sure that we're providing the services that are going to allow kids to thrive locally if possible.
All right. Well, and kind of tagging a little bit onto that, and then after this question, we'll move on to some other topics. But how can we provide additional support to school counselors and teachers to present all possibilities, all pathways, college track as well as skilled trades?
We can talk about the stigma as it's attached to a lot of different things. And I've spent a lot of time talking about the stigma that attaches to mental health over the years. But to a certain degree, there's a stigma that attaches to work that people do with their hands: plumbing, carpentry, bricklaying, mechanical work. That's necessary work, and there are plenty of good livings to be made in those fields. We've got to forget this notion that a college education is for everybody. I went to college and my kids went to college, and I honestly believe that the more education you have, the better off you are over the long haul. But for some people, it's just not the right path. And we have to get over this notion that college is for everybody. Mm-hmm. College is not for everybody, and there are a lot of people that I know that never went to college that have done very well in life, and the services they provide are essential. That we need doctors and lawyers, we need accountants and what doctors and lawyers and such, according to that old Willie Nelson song. But we also need bricklayers and carpenters and plumbers and electricians, and we can't we can't think of it as one form of employment is better than another, inherently better than another. We need all sorts of productive people, all sorts of productive work. And we need to value that work.
Absolutely. One last question on education, but this, as you know, Charlottesville dominated by the University of Virginia, but down here in Lynchburg, we have one of the highest, if not the highest, concentration of higher education institutions in the state. Thinking of that, how important is the Virginia Tuition Assistance Grant to the district? As private colleges and universities are economic drivers of our region, how will you support the TAG program going forward?
In the district I represented, I have represented, I think of myself to a large degree as a higher education legislator, because the district I represented for most of the last 30 years has included VMI and Washington Lee. I also was elected from a district that included Virginia Tech for a while, and I've represented the University of Virginia for the last 22 years. There's simply not enough room. I'm partial to the public system of education, but there's simply not enough room in our public system of education for everybody, and and for everybody's needs. I taught for 3 years at the law school at Washington Lee, and so there are there are things that some of our private schools provide, some services they provide that nobody else does, and so I have, through my years in the legislature, always supported tag grants whenever possible, increasing them whenever possible. And I've been in touch with the private schools. Do a good job of making sure that the recipients of those grants contact their legislators. So I've had contact with any number of kids over the years who have been the recipients of tag grants.
Oh, excellent. All right, I'm going to move on to a couple of other topics. And we're probably going to pick up the speed a little bit. Military and Veterans Affairs. As you know, Virginia is a state that has a lot of military veterans. In this district, what are some ways that the state can, what are some ways that Commonwealth Virginia can encourage veterans and military families to stay in Virginia once their service is done, but also to connect them to education, training, or straight to civilian careers?
We have more than 600,000 veterans in Virginia. The first military hospital in the country is in Virginia. We have tremendous assets. We have important bases and important contractors, defense contractors in Virginia. One of the young men that worked for me on one of my past campaigns has been in my ear for a number of years about the income tax situation that he's informed me, he's reminded me constantly that other states don't tax retirement income for career military folks, and Virginia, we had an age limit on that. We didn't tax it above a certain age, but we took that age limit off. So we set as our goal many years ago to be one of the most military friendly states in the country, and I think we're well on our way to doing that. We won't tax military pensions from this point forward. And I think we're well on the way to being more military friendly. We passed legislation a few years ago to allow certain residences of folks that were injured in the military service to be tax exempt. We're always, and I'm willing to consider certainly other ideas that people have that will make us more military friendly.
Okay, excellent. All right, housing and childcare. Obviously, everybody's feeling it. Rising cost and availability of childcare is impacting the available labor force, leaving many families struggling to find affordable childcare or deciding to leave the workforce to stay home with their children. Do you think that the state has a role to play in solving this problem? And what are some ways that the state can help address the issue in this district?
Well, I absolutely think that the state's got a role to play. Think about this: in the 1940 census in Virginia, the two most populous counties in Virginia were Wise and Pittsylvania. The whole Commonwealth. 1940, women were not a significant part of the workforce. World War II changed everything for Virginia. It changed our growth patterns, and it changed the nature of the workforce. Now, what we saw coming out in the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, that the lack of childcare is a real barrier to entry to the workforce for so many people, or re-entry to the workforce. I've got one of my daughters lives in Albemarle County, and she has, I've got several grandchildren, but my one grandchild that lives here is this sweet little girl, almost 3 years old, and they pay an exorbitant amount of money for childcare every month. Now, thank goodness, both she and my daughter and my son-in-law both have good jobs, but I'm really interested in what Tim Kaine's proposed at the federal level that would provide some subsidy for childcare, particularly for those people below, I think, 200% of the average gross income. I'm interested in something like that, but I'm also interested in looking at ways we can encourage better training for childcare and more efficient training for childcare in our vocational schools and in our institutions of higher learning. It's a huge problem. This is also something I want some ideas on. Can we fix this problem by providing tax credits? Can we fix this problem by providing subsidies? Can we fix this problem by loosening? I don't want to loosen restrictions on childcare, because as soon as you do, you'll hear of tragedies of children getting hurt, harmed, and I as somebody who's had a child harmed, I can tell you that there's nothing worse. And I don't want any parent to struggle with that. But this child care thing is something we have to get our arms around, because it creates a barrier for far too many people.
All right. Thank you for that answer. Moving to business climate. What are some additional ways the Commonwealth of Virginia can support economic development initiatives that improve the availability of pad-ready sites, creates jobs, and also strengthens trade?
I carried the bill in 1996 that put in the code the Governor's Opportunity Fund. We always have to be looking for ways. I don't like to think about the having to pay somebody to come here, having to create these incentives, but everybody else is playing that game. And so we have to be prepared to play that game. We have to be prepared to compete with with other states. And that means investing in site development. That means assisting localities in development of site development. That means creating funds of money, such as the government. Now it's the Commonwealth Fund. I think the name was changed. When I carried the bill in 96, I think it was the Governor's Opportunity Fund. But here's the big picture. Virginia, the state government is in the infrastructure business. If we have to provide the intellectual capital to create the workforce, then we do that through K through 12 education and through our systems of higher education, through vocational schools, through community colleges, through our public and private systems of higher education. We have to provide the transportation infrastructure, whether that's highways or railroad infrastructure. We have to provide the healthcare infrastructure. We have to make our communities livable. And we have to make sure that fiber is everywhere, because fiber is as much a part fastest broadband available. Maybe they'll call it something else next year, but for now it's still fiber. We have to make sure that all of our communities have access to transportation system. All our communities have access to fiber, and we're focused on investing in higher education in every part of Virginia, because if we do, if we can build a workforce, and if we build an environment that includes transportation, includes broadband, we can have economic development all over the state. Virginia is a great place to live. We have such great communities in every corner of the Commonwealth. There are wonderful reasons for people to come here, but we have to continue to work to make sure that we maintain the best infrastructure for our communities all over Virginia.
All right. Well, we'll certainly keep that in mind. Staying with the business climate, talk about tax reform. How can the General Assembly target tax reform to better position the state for growth and investment?
Well, we need to be thinking about the series of tax credits we have on the books right now. What makes sense? What has done what it's intended to do? When we create a tax credit, has it performed? We have to constantly. I remember there was a book published in about 1991 called Reinventing Government. And that looked at so many changes that were made in the wake of corruption scandals in the 30s and 40s, so many changes that were made to government that still were there on the books that didn't make sense anymore. And in this age of technology, we have to constantly be reevaluating the things that we have done in the past to say what can we do better, how can we make government work more efficiently, and how can we make the environment in Virginia more conducive for job growth. I think the problem with our tax code is it needs reform throughout. We don't really have a progressive tax system in Virginia, income tax system. We have a flat tax essentially. We've got to make sure that we are not overtaxing people, but we are producing enough revenue to provide the services that people expect. We need to make sure that I worry sometimes that the tax system we have, when you combine local and state, sometimes discourages businesses from coming here. I think we have to focus on finding ways to create efficiencies. Are there specific changes that I would make? I'm not certain. I know that over the course of time, we've looked at some of these business only taxes, and we've looked at the reasons they were created and the age when they were created, and we've noted a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of inequities, but it's very difficult to change. I would favor some sort of broad review of our whole tax system with the notion of, number one, figuring out how we can create more fairness for business and individuals. Number two, how we can make sure we have enough revenue to do what we need to do in the future.
All right. And one last question, then I'll give you an opportunity to any closing remarks, and we'll wrap it up then. But thinking about, kind of piggybacking off of that, what are some barriers that impede small business growth and entrepreneurship, and how can these barriers be removed or minimized?
Yeah, you constantly hear stories about different regulations that somehow impede small business. I think you have to constantly re-examine all of that. This whole notion of reinventing government, it's not like you do it, you fix it one day and it's fixed forever. You have to constantly be about the process of reevaluating what you've done to make sure it's working, make sure it's not creating the barriers you're talking about that will prevent small business or large business, or in fact, anybody from doing the things that they need to do. So I think that I had a friend when I was in the House of Delegates named Chip Woodrum, a delegate from Roanoke. He used to say that he reserved the right to be smarter tomorrow than he was today. You can't be so wed to the way things are that you aren't prepared to examine even the most basic notions to make sure that you're providing the services as efficiently and as effectively as possible. And we have to focus on building the best future we can for our children. And that means reinventing government. We have to constantly be about that process.
Okay. Well, look, thank you again so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts with us, and good luck in the rest of your campaign. But any closing thoughts or remarks before we end the session?
I've worked very hard as a legislator. I'm looking forward to earning as many votes as possible and returning to the Senate next year. If anybody needs anything, you reach out to me. I've got an office in Charlottesville. I'm on the road when I'm not practicing law. I'm on the road somewhere visiting voters. So I look forward to seeing you on the trail. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Senator Deeds.